morning, I'm Conor. Actually talking about transformation, I've been transforming myself. I've been doing this role at HSBC for just under a year now. Before then I was in the business, so we have this delineation which is somewhat artificial between the front office and back office. But they decided they wanted to put a business person inside of marketing, which I think was a really good step, not necessarily about me, but the principle of putting someone who can take the commercial elements into the discipline. And we've been taking the wholesale banking business, which we call global banking and markets, on that journey for the last year. Everyone who's flown in today will have seen an HSBC air bridge in the UK. It's one of those positions which we're very fortunate to have, that we have this almost universal recognition of the brand, but how do we bring that to life? So that's what I really want to talk about in these opening remarks, and then get to Q&A as quickly as possible. I've only got one slide, and it's all C's. I was going to add another one related to the weather. Well, maybe that should begin with an F. I'm not sure, but just to give you a little bit of additional background, the part of the business that I support, the wholesale bank, we're generally not in customer acquisition mode. Not least because of what's been happening in the economy over the last 5 or 6 years. We have pretty much everybody that we would want to be a customer wanting to have us as a bank. But these are typically multi-banked relationships where they can have as many as 20 banks on their roster. So for us, it's very much about deepening those relationships. So we've got some share of the attention, but we need to transform that and create additional value out of that. And as Mike said in his opening remarks, it is a highly regulated industry, and it is one that's evolving. The landscape is evolving, the economic landscape, and really what is the function and what is the purpose of banks and financial services providers in that model. So we've got a lot of work to do, and it's actually been a lot of fun. And we've been experimenting, we've been trying new things. We've had a whole raft of successes, but we've also had some things which perhaps haven't delivered the effectiveness that we would expect. And actually measuring those has been very, very difficult. But what I will say is, I cannot stress enough this point about, we're talking, even in this B2B sense, we're talking about the individuals. My team would refer this as to the client in the suit. These are human beings at these organizations. Global banking and markets, we deal with the largest institutions, the largest corporates, and of course governments as well. So these are typically very, very sophisticated, very diverse companies and institutions, with very large geographic spread and diversity. And whilst we may be able to segment them into a particular sector, when you look inside of those organizations, there's a lot of people. And those people all have different backgrounds, they all have different ambitions, they have individual hopes and dreams, and we're there to develop these very long relationships and position the bank as a trusted financial partner of choice, rather than just someone who wants to sell them a product or a service today. And I think that B2B moniker, we talk a lot about how it's very different to B2C, but we mustn't lose sight of the fact that we're talking about individuals, and we must show that we understand those individuals and adapt what we have to share to them with them. These are people with these ambitions, and we're looking for these long-term relationships, but how do we position ourselves as someone accessible? And as we talked earlier, this idea of someone who's in the ATM lobby withdrawing cash because they're going home to pay their builders or their cleaners or something like that, or they see an advert on the wall, they'll see a print ad on the wall, and it's appealing to them in the mindset of they're taking out the cash for their personal life. But as soon as they get to their desk or on their way to their desk, they're in this CFO, CIO mindset. And we need to be able to bring that brand proposition to life for them in ways that they understand. And so content, and this idea of consistent and cohesive. You can't fake content. The lack of authenticity will be very, very obvious. We've got tons of content. We've got an awful lot of customer-facing staff who have typically in HSBC worked here for a very, very long time, and they do a couple of things extremely well. They know their markets and their customers extremely well. So they have a lot of history, they have a lot of insight, and the customers value that. The other thing they do extremely well is they react extremely well when customers ask us for something. Maybe they see some event, something happens in the economy, and they ask us to bring that to life and explain what to do about it. Well, we do that extremely reactively, and with very, very good results. Well, the challenge from a marketing perspective is, well, how can we bring some of that reactive content to life and yet not broadcast everything to everyone, but allow people to find what's relevant to them from our content libraries, our content distribution. And this is where the experiments and the successes have been happening recently. We've been having content partnerships with a number of different agencies, a number of different media, and the results have been encouraging, but far, far from perfect. And I think this idea of as soon as you introduce the channel, the technology into this, and I'd pick up on what Chuck was saying earlier, the idea of selling me as a buyer a technology solution is probably going to frustrate me more than give me an opportunity. Because what I don't want to do is create an environment of content which isn't cohesive. I don't want to see individual marketing utilities which have a shelf life, have a beginning and a middle and an end, which doesn't plug into something else that we've created. Because it confuses the consumer, it confuses the client, and makes it difficult for them to find what they need. And very much from the customer's perspective, we don't want to show them stuff they don't need today, but the challenge is back to that idea of their individual hopes and dreams. Today they may be working at Siemens, but tomorrow they may move into a different sector or a different industry. They may get a promotion. They may go from a regional treasury manager to being regional CFO or global CFO and so on. So how do we make it very, very clear to them that our sectoral expertise is not limited, and that we remain accessible for them? So that's been a it's been a challenge, and leads into the channels. And much like I think we were saying on the graphs earlier, we still do believe, the business people still do believe, that there's literally no substitute for face-to-face. And perhaps a lot of that comes back to the ability to measure the impact. But if we can supplement that channel and make the content accessible and cohesive, and measure it, measure impact, adjust on the fly, and if we can make sure that the business people who are talking and have the opportunities to speak with their clients and offer them this solutions-based approach, if they too can access the content and make it accessible in that online and offline channel seamlessly, then that's likely to have the best impact. And we need to recognize that the customers are evolving. They don't all use a single platform. We've got lots of different sort of technologies at play in the green room already. We've got customers, very, very large customers in countries where they're still using dial-up. So their ability to interact with us, their ability to consume our content in the ways we would like is difficult and uncertain. So we need to be able to adapt to that. So the measurability is a problem, and it's an opportunity. I think there's a lot of science. I hosted an event recently about do B2B events still make sense? And my team turned up hoping to get some answers about how to measure it. And unfortunately, we left with more questions than we did with answers. But I think if we can hold the content at its core, make sure that we adapt it and make it accessible in all channels and evolve with the customers, we'll have the greatest chance of success.